or stepchildren, or it might be a sibling. We got adolescents now having to do that. Statistically, it says probably about 50% of the men who sexually abuse their children were probably abused as children themselves. It might be a little higher depending on where you are in the country, where that happens. And in my work, and I work with men who offend children also, I've been doing a group for 8 years now. And it says about 50% of them were sexually abused themselves. And there's some impulse control problems going on with that person also. It's a power issue going on also. So there's a lot of things that you can see that leads up to it, but it doesn't come to anyone's attention until something actually happens. Mm-hmm. So there's a need to do a lot of preventive work and to kind of know what some things to look for. So people have to kind of know for themselves, I might be running into some problems here if I'm having this, or this is happening to me, and this type of thing.
Well, what are some of the power, you mentioned some of the power issues and some of the things that you're dealing with, and all of those things that you're saying is good, those things are good, but some of the things that you're alluding to, you're not telling us here, Ms. Butler. Which is to say, when we say that there's a power issue involved, what are we saying, that there's an issue between the child and the person who's abusing?
The person might have lost control outside the home in other places. Say they might have lost a job or something, or there's some power been taken away in some other situation. It might be some societal pressures that's going on. But a person can feel that they're in control of their own home. A lot of men who abuse their children won't even go outside their home and deal with the prostitute or deal with someone else. They have a lot of some ethical things that's going on. So it's just losing control in one area and trying to gain control in another area. It's one problem that we see with this. It could be arousal type of pattern, that there has been a problem with their arousal patterns, where there's some deviant arousal behaviors going on that they can't control, and maybe not even know it until it gets out of hand. Sometimes it's some gradual things where pornography plays a big role in this. They've been viewing pornography, have really gotten into maybe some peeping, maybe seeing children undressed inappropriately, and not knowing that this has been a problem for me until they actually first touch a child. Also seeing that when we get men in their 20s and 30s, they might have gotten charged with it. Once they get into a program, into treatment, you say, when was the first time you had those thoughts, or the first time you touched a child? It usually starts at adolescence. So we know that now that it starts at adolescence, so that's the place we need to start preventing, and that's where treatment should start in an early age. And it's even getting earlier now than adolescents. We got some 10 and 11-year-olds who have actually touched their siblings. So we can kind of deal with it there. We get a better hold on it.
Very good. Ms. Cannon.
The common denominator, I think, for perpetrators of domestic violence is, again, a power and control issue. That they're violent toward their partner because it does enable them to gain power and control over her. It doesn't create a loving relationship or one based on trust, but it does allow him to have control of her. And then other forms of controlling behaviors can be used to maintain the power and control once it's obtained by means of the violence, such things as emotional abuse, economic abuse, isolation, keeping her away from friends and family, using the children, saying bad things about her to the children, male privilege, that whole notion that just because I'm the man in this house, I'm king of the castle, and whatever I say goes, I rule the roost here. Those sorts of things can be used, and they always point to the fact that the violence can happen again. All of those nonviolent things that I mentioned may occur in homes where there's not been any violence, but once that violence has happened, then those abuses always point to the fact that violence could occur again, and hence there's that much more strength in that form of abuse.
So once it happens, there's a strong possibility that it will happen again.
Yes.
And those persons who are subject to that kind of violence the first time ought to react at that particular time.
Yes.
But now, why is it that in some instances people don't react to that kind of violence? I mean, what is the pattern there?
That's a very interesting issue, because we know that 80% of the men that we work with, and statistically around the country, grew up in homes where either they were abused as children or they saw their mother being abused. So there are some that grow up in that environment that make a choice somehow, that they choose not to use violence in dealing with the stresses and situations of their adult life. And that's it's one of, I think, one of the things about humans. There's a certain mystery about the choices that we make and why we make them. Perhaps there was somewhere along the line a good role model, someone that did provide them some sense of what a true relationship is that's not based on power and control. Another thing that feeds into this problem, it's not a cause, but it is something that exacerbates the problem of domestic violence, is substance abuse. And again, it's not a cause, but it's one thing that can really accelerate this problem.
Well, do you find substance abuse having anything to do with child sexual abuse, Ms. Butler?
We have people using that from time to time as an excuse, but as a treatment professional, we never accept that as an excuse.
Now, how do they use it when they use substances?
We just said I was high, I really didn't know what I was doing. If I hadn't been drinking, I wouldn't have done this. Or they use it to say, well, I really don't remember because I was drunk at the time. And once we get into it, we found out that they really do remember. People don't actually do something that devastating and not remember it.
Now, both these, of course, represent deviant behavior. And I think that we could almost interchange the things that we're saying. Both have been in the closet for the longest. I think both have, for the most part, are associated with the person who is the abuser, having been abused himself or herself, and et cetera. And it seems that with that kind of pattern, that we ought to be able to come up with some kind of solutions to deal with this. What are some of the solutions to deal with child sexual violence and child sexual abuse, Ms. Butler?
Well, I guess one thing is making people aware and having people accept that it is a problem in this community and in this country, and stop saying that, well, it's not going to happen in my home, or it won't happen to my child. It can happen to anybody's child. And I guess that's the first thing, just be aware that it can happen, regardless of who you are and what you do and what you are, it can happen. And I think for so long we've kind of looked the other way and not always thinking about, well, because it's happening over there, you know, I don't really have to deal with it. It's everybody's problem and it's everybody's responsibility is the main thing that I think we need to get across. I wrote an article one time saying child sex abuse is everyone's responsibility.